History is a battlefield, and truth is the first casualty. Welcome to the History Front Line. The rain fell hard that night in the Black Forest. It was late October 1936. The kind of darkness that swallows sound, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and stays there. Near the town of Freiburg, farmers heard something they couldn't explain. Not thunder, not an engine they recognized. Something else. A howl that came from above, and then silence. By dawn, the Schutzstaffel had sealed off 60 square kilometers of forest. The SS, elite soldiers with dogs and trucks, turning away locals at gunpoint. No explanation, no apology, just orders. And orders, in Nazi Germany, were the only truth that mattered. What crashed in those woods? The official records say nothing, but the whispers, they say everything. A disc, not a plane, not a bomb. A disc-shaped object buried in the mud, half embedded in ancient trees. Metal that didn't burn. Markings that weren't German, weren't Russian, weren't anything human engineers had ever seen. The SS didn't just secure the site, they excavated it, they studied it, and then they made it disappear. This is where it begins. Not with a declaration of war, not with a political speech, but with a secret so strange, so impossible, that even the men who touched it weren't sure what they were holding. But they knew one thing: it wasn't theirs, and if they could understand it, they could own the future. By 1936, Adolf Hitler had been in power for 3 years. The Treaty of Versailles had crippled Germany after the First World War. No air force, no submarines, armies limited to 100,000 men. The nation was humiliated, starving, desperate, and desperation breeds obsession. Hitler didn't just want to rebuild Germany, he wanted to transcend it, to create a Reich that would last 1,000 years. But you can't build eternity with yesterday's weapons, so they looked elsewhere. To the stars, to the occult, to technologies that defied physics itself. The Black Forest incident was never confirmed, never documented in official Nazi archives. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, especially when the absence is deliberate, especially when the men who controlled that evidence also controlled the camps, the gas chambers, and the propaganda machine that convinced millions to march toward oblivion. What we do know is this: after 1936, something changed. Funding poured into fringe scientific programs. Engineers with no formal qualifications suddenly had access to state laboratories. Projects with no names, blueprints with no origins, and aircraft that defied the very laws of gravity. Some say the disk in the Black Forest was extraterrestrial, a craft from another world that miscalculated its trajectory and fell into the wrong hands. Others say it was a prototype, an early German experiment that failed and had to be covered up to preserve secrecy. But the most disturbing theory? That it was both. That something not of this earth had been watching, waiting, and when it crashed, it chose to let itself be found. Because what use is power if no one knows how to wield it? The SS didn't just collect artifacts, they collected people, scientists, occultists, mediums, anyone who claimed to have knowledge beyond the material world. And in the dark parlors of Munich, in the locked rooms of Berlin, these men and women began to speak of things that should not exist. Engines without fuel, flight without wings, communication without wires. And always, always, the same name whispered in the shadows: Aldebaran, a star 65 light-years away. A name that meant nothing to most Germans, but to the Vril Society, it meant everything. They believed that Aldebaran was home to an ancient race, a master civilization that had visited Earth thousands of years ago, a people who had built the pyramids, created the myths, and left behind the seeds of knowledge for those who knew how to listen. And they claimed they were listening. The Black Forest crash was just the beginning. A physical object, a relic. But the real downloads, they said, came from the ether, through trance, through meditation, through women with closed eyes and trembling hands who drew diagrams they didn't understand and spoke in languages they'd never learned. Sound insane? It was. But insanity and innovation often share the same bed. and the Third Reich was willing to sleep with both if it meant victory. By 1937, less than a year after the Black Forest incident, the first experimental disc prototypes were being constructed. Not in public factories, not in documented facilities, but in hidden hangars, underground workshops, places that exist only in eyewitness testimony and blurred photographs smuggled out by men who died before they could explain what they'd seen. The Nazis called them Flugscheiben, flying discs. But they had other names too: Haunebu, Vril, the Bell. Names that sound like science fiction, names that have been dismissed as hoaxes, as propaganda, as the delusions of conspiracy theorists who can't accept that history is just history. But what if it isn't? What if the greatest trick the Nazis ever pulled wasn't convincing the world they were defeated? What if it was convincing the world they never had these weapons in the first place? Because if they did, if even a fraction of these stories are true, then the war we think we know is a lie. The technology we think we understand is incomplete. And the victory we celebrate? It may have come at a price we're still paying. The rain stopped in the Black Forest. The SS left. The trees grew back over the scars. But deep in the archives, deep in the minds of the men who were there, something remained. A memory, a blueprint, a possibility that once you open the door to the impossible, you can never fully close it again.
This is not a story about what was.
This is a story about what might have been, and what might still be waiting. Munich, 1922. The war was over, but the chaos wasn't. Germany was a broken nation drowning in debt, its currency worthless, its pride shattered. In the back rooms of cafes and the basements of old estates, groups gathered. Not soldiers, not politicians, mystics, occultists, people who believed that if science had failed to save Germany, perhaps magic could. The Tool Society was one such group. Named after a mythical northern land, it was a secret organization that blended nationalism with esoteric ritual. They believed in a hidden history of the Aryan race, a lineage that stretched back to lost continents and ancient gods. But the Tool Society was not just about myth, it was about power. And in 1922, they were about to meet someone who claimed she could access that power directly. Her name was Maria Orsic. Accounts describe her as striking: long dark hair that reached her waist, calm eyes that seemed to look through you rather than at you. She was a medium, a woman who claimed to receive transmissions from beyond, not from the dead, from the living, from a civilization orbiting the star Aldebaran. It sounds absurd, until you realize that the men who sat in those seances weren't fools. They were engineers, professors, future architects of the Nazi war machine, and they believed her. The sessions would begin in silence, candles, darkness. Maria would close her eyes, her breathing slowing until the room itself seemed to hold its breath. And then she would speak. Not in German, not in any language anyone recognized. Symbols would pour from her hands onto paper. Diagrams, equations, designs for machines that didn't exist. She called it the Vril force, an energy that connected all consciousness in the universe. A power that, if harnessed, could allow humanity to transcend the physical, to fly without wings, to generate energy without combustion, to communicate across the stars. The Vril Society formed around her, a splinter group from Thule. Where Thule focused on the past, Vril focused on the future. And that future, they said, had already been mapped by the Aldebarans, a race millions of years ahead of humanity, beings of pure light who had once walked the earth and now watched from afar, waiting, testing, to see if humanity was ready to join them. But there was a condition. Only the pure could receive the knowledge. Only those of Aryan blood could channel the Vril force without corruption. The Aldebarans, Maria claimed, had warned her. If the technology fell into the wrong hands, it would destroy rather than elevate. It would be weaponized, perverted, used not to unite humanity but to dominate it. How convenient, you might think, that this alien wisdom aligned perfectly with Nazi racial ideology. How suspicious that beings from 65 light-years away would care about German bloodlines. But belief doesn't require logic, it requires need. And Germany in those years needed to believe in something greater than its own ruin. By 1924, the Vril Society had expanded. New members, new resources, funding from industrialists who saw potential in these strange blueprints. The designs Maria produced were studied, refined. Engineers began to ask questions. Could these machines actually fly? Could an electromagnetic field generate lift without traditional propulsion? Could you manipulate gravity itself? The answers, impossibly, began to lean toward yes. One design in particular captured their attention. A disc-shaped craft, smooth, seamless, no visible engines, no wings, just a central cabin surrounded by rotating rings. The plans called it the Jenseitsflugmaschine, the otherworld flight machine. A vessel designed not just to fly through air, but through dimensions. Maria described its operation in trance. The inner ring would spin clockwise, the outer ring counterclockwise. Between them, a magnetic field would form. Not attraction, not repulsion, something else. A folding of space, a bubble that separated the craft from normal physics. Inside that bubble, gravity would be a suggestion, not a law. To the engineers, it sounded impossible. To the occultists, it sounded inevitable. And to the Nazi Party, rising rapidly in the chaos of Weimar Germany, it sounded useful. Adolf Hitler met with members of the Thule Society multiple times in the early 20s. The exact nature of those meetings is lost to history, but the outcome is not. The occult societies that had been fringe curiosities suddenly had protection, funding, legitimacy. And by the time Hitler seized power in 1933, those backroom seances had evolved into state-sponsored research programs. The Vril Society operated in the grey space between science and religion. They held lectures on cosmic energy, they published pamphlets on ancient Aryan technology, and behind closed doors, they built prototypes. The first was called Vril 1, constructed in 1934. A small disc, barely 5 meters across, rudimentary controls, a single pilot seat. When it powered on, witnesses reported a hum that made their teeth ache, a vibration that felt wrong, like reality itself was being strained. Did it fly? Reports conflict. Some say it hovered for seconds before crashing. Others say it achieved stable flight, but was too unstable to weaponize. The Nazi archives, predictably, say nothing. But photographs exist, blurry, distant, showing something in a hangar that doesn't look like any plane of that era. By 1936, the year of the Black Forest incident, the Vril Society's influence had grown. They were no longer just mystics with dreams. They were consultants, advisors to the SS. Their blueprints were being integrated into official military research. And Maria Orsic, the woman who started it all,
Had become both a prophet and a prisoner.
because once you show men power, they don't let you leave. She continued her sessions, continued channeling designs. But now, SS officers attended, scientists with clipboards, men who didn't care about enlightenment or cosmic unity. They wanted weapons. And Maria, willingly or not, gave them the keys. The Aldebarans, she said, were growing concerned. The transmissions were changing, warnings. The technology was being misused. The Vril force, meant to unify, was being bent toward destruction. She claimed she tried to stop, tried to refuse further sessions. But by then, it was too late. The machinery was in motion. The Reich had tasted the impossible and wanted more. And if the voices from Aldebaran wouldn't cooperate, the Nazis would find other sources, other voices, darker ones. In 1945, as Berlin burned, Maria Orsic vanished. Some say she fled to South America. Others say she was executed by the SS to protect their secrets. A few claim she succeeded in her ultimate goal, that she built a craft capable of interstellar travel and left Earth entirely, returning to the stars she'd spent her life listening to. The truth? We'll never know. But her legacy remained. The blueprints, the prototypes, the idea that flight could be achieved not by conquering the air, but by ignoring it entirely. And in the darkest facilities of the Third Reich, that idea was about to become metal, become real, become the terror that would haunt the skies of World War II. The question was never whether they could build it. The question was whether they should have. The year is 1938. The world is watching Germany rearm. The Luftwaffe is born, defying Versailles. Panzers roll off production lines. Hitler has Austria. He's eyeing Czechoslovakia. To the outside world, the Nazi war machine looks formidable but conventional. Tanks, planes, boots on the ground. But in hidden facilities scattered across the Reich, a different kind of weapon is taking shape. They called them the Haunebu discs. Not planes, not rockets, something else entirely. If the Vril Society's designs were the theory, Haunebu was the application. The moment when mysticism became mechanics, when the whispers from Aldebaran became rivets and metal and engines that shouldn't exist. The project was classified beyond classified, not just secret, non-existent. No official paperwork, no budget lines, funded through black projects within black projects. The kind of operation where workers were siloed, where each engineer knew only their piece of the puzzle, where asking too many questions meant disappearing. At the center of it all was a device they called the Thule Tacunator, the heart of the Haunebu, an electromagnetic engine that generated what they termed a magnetic field impulsor. Picture two counter-rotating cylinders, one inside the other. Between them, a medium, not oil, not water, a metallic compound that responded to high-frequency electrical currents. When activated, the cylinders spun, faster, faster, until they blurred into a single ring of light, and then the craft would rise. Not with thrust, not with lift, it would simply disconnect from gravity, as if the earth beneath it had stopped pulling, as if the machine had convinced physics that it didn't have to participate anymore. Haunebu 1 was the first full prototype, built in 1939, just months before the invasion of Poland. It was small by later standards, 8 meters in diameter, 2-man crew, armored hull thick enough to withstand machine gun fire, and mounted on rotating turrets, 2 50mm cannons, because even in a flying saucer, the Nazis remembered to add guns. The design was brutal, functional. The hull was a dark metallic grey, almost black. No windows, just narrow slits for observation. The upper dome was smooth. The lower section housed the propulsion system, and around the equator, the rotating band that generated the field. When idle, it looks almost mundane. Strange, yes, but plausibly human. When active, it looked like something that had fallen from the sky and learned to go back. Test flights were conducted at night. Remote locations, Baltic coast, Bavarian Alps, places where curious eyes were few and military presence was absolute. Pilots reported the same sensations, a hum that vibrated through their bones, a feeling of weightlessness even before takeoff, and once airborne, movement that defied every instinct trained in conventional aircraft. No need to bank into turns. The entire craft could rotate on its axis without changing direction. No stall speed, no altitude ceiling that mattered. One report, unverified but persistent, claimed a test pilot took Haunebu 1 to 15,000 meters in under 3 minutes. Not climbing, rising, as if altitude was a choice, not a challenge. But Haunebu 1 was just the beginning. By 1941, as the Wehrmacht tore through the Soviet Union, a second prototype was being finalized. Haunebu 2, larger, faster, deadlier. This craft was designed for combat, 26 meters in diameter, crew of 9, armed with 4 turrets and a rumored energy weapon mounted in the lower hull. Some accounts call it a particle beam, others a focused electromagnetic pulse. Whatever it was, test footage allegedly showed it cutting through a tank's armor like a torch through paper. The engineering was absurd. Conventional aircraft of the era topped out around 500 kilometers per hour, 600 if you pushed it. Haunebu 2 was reportedly clocked at 6,000, not a typo, 6,000 kilometers per hour. At that speed, air resistance should have torn the craft apart, should have turned the crew into pulp. But the magnetic field, they claimed, created a barrier, a bubble of stable space where normal aerodynamics didn't apply. Inside that bubble, the crew experienced minimal G-forces.
The craft could accelerate, stop, reverse direction instantly. 90-degree turns at full speed. Maneuvers that would kill any pilot in a conventional plane. And then there was Haunebu 3, the monster. 71 meters in diameter, a flying fortress, crew capacity of 32. This wasn't a fighter, this was a mobile command center, a craft designed to stay airborne for weeks, armed to the teeth, armored like a battleship, and allegedly capable of reaching the edge of space itself. Only 2 were ever built, maybe. The documentation is contradictory, fragmented. Some sources say Haunebu 3 never flew. Others say it did, once, in 1945, and then vanished into history along with everything else the Nazis tried to hide. But here's the problem with all of this. If these craft existed, where's the evidence? Where are the wrecks, the captured prototypes, the testimony from Allied forces who faced them in combat? The answer is complicated. First, secrecy. The Haunebu program was so compartmentalized that even within the SS, most officers didn't know it existed. When the war ended, documents were destroyed, facilities were demolished, prototypes were either dismantled or relocated. The Nazis knew they were losing. They knew the Allies would take everything they found. So they made sure there was nothing to find. Second, witnesses. Pilots who saw these craft and survived were often dismissed. Shell shock, exhaustion, misidentified conventional aircraft. The human mind, under stress, sees what it expects. And in 1944, no one expected flying saucers. But some reports couldn't be ignored. November 1944. American bomber crews over Germany. Multiple pilots, multiple missions, all describing the same thing. Glowing spheres, discs, objects that paced their formations. Didn't attack, just watched. They nicknamed them Foo Fighters after a comic strip. A joke, a way to cope with something that didn't make sense. But what if it did make sense?
What if those Foo Fighters were Haunebu scouts, observation craft, testing, learning, gathering data on Allied tactics and technology? Not engaging because they didn't need to. Not yet. The Nazis had a term for their secret projects: Wunderwaffe, wonder weapons. The V-2 rocket, the Messerschmitt 262 jet fighter. Weapons that were real, documented, terrifying in their innovation. The Haunebu discs, if they existed, would be the ultimate Wunderwaffe. But they came too late. By the time Haunebu prototypes were operational, Germany was collapsing. The Eastern Front was gone, the Western Front was crumbling. Even wonder weapons can't reverse a war when there's no infrastructure left to deploy them. The factories were bombed, the fuel was gone, the pilots were dead or captured. So the discs, if they flew, flew in secret, in desperation. And when Berlin fell, they flew away, or were buried, or were taken. Because here's the final uncomfortable truth. When the Americans and Soviets rolled into Germany, they didn't just arrest Nazis, they recruited them. Operation Paperclip, Operation Ozoaviakim. Scientists, engineers, anyone with knowledge worth stealing was given a choice: work for us or face trial. And if those scientists had been working on flying discs, you think they'd admit it? Or would they take that knowledge, those blueprints, those prototypes, and rebuild them under a new flag? The Haunebu may have been German, but the technology? The technology didn't care about borders. It didn't care who won the war. It just cared about flying. Lieutenant Edward Schluter was 23 years old when he stopped believing in coincidence. It was the night of November 23rd, 1944. He was piloting a night fighter over the Alsace region of France. Cold, dark. The kind of mission where you rely on instruments and instinct because visibility is measured in faith.
His radar operator spotted them first. 8 objects, fast, flying in formation. Schluter adjusted course, assuming they were German fighters, but as he closed in, something was wrong. The objects glowed.
bright orange, like burning metal. But they weren't falling. They were keeping pace with him. He tried evasive maneuvers. The objects matched him. He climbed. They climbed. He dove. They dove. Perfectly synchronized, as if they were tethered to his plane by invisible wire. His gunner tried to fire. The objects didn't react, didn't flee, didn't attack. They just watched. After 15 minutes, they broke formation and vanished. Not flying away, vanishing. One moment there, the next gone. No radar trace, no exhaust trail, nothing. When Schluter landed and filed his report, his commanding officer asked the obvious question. "What do you think they were?" Schluter didn't hesitate. "I think they were German, but I don't think they were planes." He wasn't the only one. By late 1944, reports of strange aerial phenomena were flooding in from every theater of the European war. American pilots called them Foo Fighters, borrowing the term from a popular comic strip. British crews called them Kraut balls. The Soviets had their own name, equally crude, equally dismissive. But beneath the humor was unease. These objects appeared during the most dangerous missions: nighttime bombing runs over Germany, reconnaissance flights over occupied territory, dogfights where visibility was already compromised. And they always did the same thing. They followed, they observed, and then they disappeared. Some glowed red, others green or white. Some were spheres, others disc-shaped. Size estimates varied wildly. Softball, basketball, Volkswagen Beetle. But the behavior was consistent. They moved with impossible agility. They ignored anti-aircraft fire, and they never, ever attacked. That last part was crucial, because if they were weapons, why didn't they engage? If they were German, why waste the advantage of surprise? Unless observation was the point, unless gathering data was more valuable than a single kill, or unless they weren't German at all. The official Allied response was studied dismissal, ball lightning, atmospheric phenomena, St. Elmo's fire, stressed pilots misidentifying flak reflections. Every sighting was explained away with some variation of "not what you think it was." But the explanations didn't fit. Ball lightning doesn't follow aircraft. It doesn't match complex maneuvers. It doesn't appear exclusively during combat operations, and it definitely doesn't show up on radar, which some of these objects did. The Germans, for their part, were equally baffled. Their pilots reported the same phenomena: glowing orbs, discs, objects that tracked their formations and vanished without explanation. They assumed it was Allied technology, some kind of new surveillance drone or psychological weapon designed to unnerve them. Which raises the question, if both sides saw them and both sides thought they belonged to the enemy, who did they belong to? 3 theories emerged. Theory 1, German Wunderwaffe. The Haunebu prototypes or something similar. Remote-controlled drones sent to monitor Allied bomber streams. The glowing effect could be ionized air from the electromagnetic propulsion. The lack of aggression could be strategic. Why reveal your capability when you're still outnumbered? Just learn, adapt, wait for the moment when deployment would matter. This theory fits some facts. The Germans did have advanced jet technology. They did have programs researching unconventional propulsion. And they did have a history of field testing prototypes in live combat scenarios. Consequences be damned. But it doesn't explain why the Germans saw them too, unless there were multiple projects. Unless different factions within the SS were operating independently, unaware of each other's work, which, given Nazi bureaucracy, wasn't impossible. Theory 2. Allied counter-technology. Maybe the Americans or British had their own secret program. Maybe they'd captured German research early in the war and were testing their own discs. The Foo Fighters were their recon drones, sent to monitor German forces while gathering data on their secret weapons. This theory has merit. The Allies did capture technology. They did run black projects. And if you wanted to test a revolutionary aircraft, what better proving ground than an active war zone where eyewitnesses would be dismissed as traumatized? But again, the problem. The Allies saw them and didn't recognize them. Either the compartmentalization was absolute, meaning even frontline pilots weren't briefed on friendly experimental craft, or they genuinely didn't know what they were looking at. Theory 3. Neither side built them. Something else was watching the war. This is where it gets uncomfortable. Because if the Foo Fighters weren't German and weren't allied, the options narrow considerably. Neutral observers? Unlikely. There were no neutral powers with that level of technology. Soviet? Possible, but the timeline doesn't support it. They were still desperate for basic equipment, not building flying saucers, which leaves the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Not popular, not scientific, but persistent. Because what you call an object that defies known propulsion systems, ignores conventional physics, and appears during humanity's most violent, self-destructive spasm? What do you call something that watches a world war like a scientist watches ants burn under a magnifying glass? You call it interested. The war ended. The Foo Fighters stopped appearing. Or maybe they just stopped being reported. Maybe once the shooting stopped, there was no reason to monitor anymore. Maybe the experiment was over. Or maybe they realized humanity had graduated to a new level of destructive capability. Because in August 1945, the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And suddenly, the world had weapons that could end more than battles. They could end everything. And if you were an outside intelligence watching a species develop nuclear fission, you might start paying closer attention. But before we go down that road, we need to understand what the Germans themselves were building in those final desperate months. Because while the Foo Fighters remain a mystery, there's one Nazi project that isn't mysterious at all. It's horrifying. And its name was Die Glocke, the bell. Deep in the mountains of Lower Silesia, in what is now southwestern Poland, there was a mine, the Wenceslas mine, abandoned in the 30s, worthless for ore. But in 1944, the SS decided it had value after all. They sealed the entrances, diverted rail lines to a hidden spur, brought in concrete, tons of it. They poured a structure the workers weren't allowed to see completed. They worked in shifts, separated. No one saw the whole picture. And when their shifts ended, they were relocated, or they disappeared. By the end of the war, the Wenceslas mine was gone, demolished, filled in. The rail line was torn up, the records were burned. And the structure they built? It's still there. Overgrown, cracked by time, but unmistakable. Locals call it Die Glocke Henge, the bell henge, a concrete ring, thick, 12 support pillars arranged in a circle. At the center, mounting points, heavy, industrial, designed to hold something under immense stress. Something that spun. Die Glocke, the bell. The most classified project in the Nazi arsenal. More secret than the atomic program, more protected than the V2 rocket facilities. A device so dangerous that the scientists who worked on it had a mortality rate that made combat look safe. What was it? The accounts come from a single source. A Polish intelligence officer named Igor Witkowski, who claimed he accessed classified SS documents in the 90s. His description is detailed, disturbing, and if even half of it is true, it means the Nazis were experimenting with forces that should have stayed theoretical. The bell itself was a metal cylinder, approximately 3 meters tall, 2 meters in diameter, dark, metallic surface, no windows, no visible seams. It was split into 2 counter-rotating sections, one above, one below. Between them, a chamber filled with a substance the Nazis called Cerium 525. Violet, metallic, mercury-based but not mercury. It glowed faintly in darkness, and when the device activated, it spun, both sections rotating in opposite directions at immense speed. The chamber between them became a blur, and the bell itself began to produce effects that shouldn't exist. The first effect was light, not normal light, a pale, sickly luminescence that hurt to look at directly. Witnesses described it as if the air itself was burning, as if reality was being strained. The second effect was sound, a deep hum that grew louder as the rotation speed increased. Not mechanical, resonant, a frequency that made your teeth ache and your vision blur. Some technicians reported tasting metal, others sudden nosebleeds. The third effect was worse. Plants died. Not withered, died. Near the henge, vegetation turned black and decomposed within hours. Leaves became slime. Tree bark peeled away like wet paper. Grass dissolved into a grey ooze. Samples taken afterward showed no bacterial activity, no recognizable cellular structure, as if the biology itself had been unwritten. Animals fared no better. Test subjects placed near the operating bell developed crystals in their blood. Their tissues hardened, their bones became brittle. Post-mortem examinations found molecular structures that shouldn't exist in organic matter. Carbon chains that had somehow rearranged into geometric patterns,
as if life had been forced into non-living configurations. And the scientists? They died too. 7 physicists in total, all dead within months of beginning work on Die Glocke. Causes varied: hemorrhaging, organ failure, cellular breakdown. But the pattern was clear. Exposure to the device was lethal. Not immediately, not always directly, but inevitable. So what was the point? Why build something that killed everything around it? Because it did something else. Something the Nazis valued more than life. It bent time. According to Witkowski's sources, the bell wasn't a weapon, not in the traditional sense. It was a time displacement device. The counter-rotating cylinders, the Zerum 525, the electromagnetic field it generated, all of it was designed to create a localized distortion in space-time. A bubble where the normal flow of cause and effect became negotiable. Initial tests showed clocks inside the field running slow, then stopping, then, allegedly, running backward. Objects placed inside would vanish and reappear seconds, minutes, or hours later. Some objects returned unchanged, others were aged, rusted, as if they'd experienced decades in moments. One test, never verified, claimed they sent a canister into the field and it didn't return. Not immediately. It came back 6 hours later, but inside the canister, only 10 minutes had passed. Time dilation. Real, measurable time dilation. If this was true, the implications were staggering. A soldier could be sent forward, experience years of training in days. An army could be frozen, preserved until needed. Intelligence could be gathered from the future. Not prediction, observation. But there's another possibility. One that the Nazis, in their desperation, might have been pursuing. Escape. If you could bend time, could you bend space? Could you open a door to somewhere else? Not another country, another dimension. A refuge where the Reich could survive the war. Where defeat didn't matter, because the battlefield itself was left behind. Some accounts claim the bell was tested for this, that in the final weeks of the war, as Soviet artillery pounded Berlin, the device was activated one last time, not for an experiment, for a departure, and that when the Allies arrived, the bell was gone. The henge remained, the mounting points, the scorch marks, the dead zone around it where nothing would grow for years. But the device itself? Vanished, taken apart and smuggled out, destroyed to prevent capture, or activated, with its operators inside, and sent somewhere the war couldn't reach. We know the Nazis were researching theoretical physics, Werner Heisenberg and the uncertainty principle, the quantum mechanics that suggested reality was far stranger than it appeared. And we know they were desperate, willing to try anything, willing to sacrifice anyone. Die Glocke represents the darkest edge of that desperation, the point where science becomes horror, where innovation becomes atrocity, where the question isn't, can we, but should we? And the Nazis never cared about the second question. The Wenceslas mine is a tourist site now. You can visit the henge, take photographs, read the plaques that explain it was part of some conventional weapons project. The official history is sanitized, safe, but the locals won't go near it at night. They say the ground still hums. They say clocks malfunction. And they say that sometimes, in the darkness, you can see a pale glow, flickering, fading, like a door that's almost closed but not quite. The bell may be gone, but its echoes remain. And the man who controlled it? The man who held the keys to every secret weapon the Nazis built? He's gone too. His name was Hans Kammler, SS general, engineer, mass murderer. And in April 1945, as the Third Reich collapsed into rubble and blood, he did something no other high-ranking Nazi managed. He disappeared. Not captured,
Not killed, gone. No grave, no trial, no confirmed death, just absence. And in that absence, 1,000 questions that have never been answered. Kammler was not a household name, not like Himmler or Goering. He didn't give speeches, didn't appear in newsreels. He worked in the shadows, in the tunnels, in the places where the war's most horrific innovations were born. He was the architect of Auschwitz, literally. He designed the crematoriums, the gas chambers, the industrial murder machine that killed over 1 million people. He calculated capacity, optimized flow, made genocide efficient. But that was just his day job. His real value to the Reich was in engineering the impossible. He was placed in charge of the V-2 rocket program, the world's first ballistic missile, a weapon that could strike London from 300 kilometers away, the precursor to every ICBM that followed. Under his command, the V-2 went from prototype to production. Thousands built, thousands launched. He also oversaw the Messerschmitt 262 jet fighter, the first operational jet aircraft in history, faster than anything the Allies had. Too late to change the war's outcome, but proof that German engineering was years ahead. And then there were the projects that don't appear in any textbook, the ones buried in mountains and hidden in forests. The Wunderwaffe programs, Die Glocke, the Haunebu discs, the research into electromagnetic propulsion and theoretical physics. Kammler controlled all of it. He was the man who knew where every secret facility was located, who understood how every black project functioned, who could, if he chose, rebuild the Nazi war machine from memory alone. Which makes his disappearance in April 1945 one of the most consequential mysteries of the 20th century. The last confirmed sighting was on April 9, 1945. He was in Prague. The Soviets were closing in from the east, the Americans from the west. Germany had weeks, maybe days left. Kammler gathered his staff, gave orders to destroy documents, and then left with a small convoy of vehicles. Direction unknown, destination unknown. After that, nothing. Official records list him as killed in action on May 9, 1945. But there's no body, no witnesses to the death, no grave registration, just a notation in a ledger. Hans Kammler, deceased. Except he probably wasn't. Theory 1. He was executed by the SS. The war was lost. Secrets needed to be buried. Kammler knew too much, so he was taken somewhere quiet and shot. His body was burned or dumped. The death date was falsified to create a paper trail, bureaucracy covering for murder. This theory has merit. The Nazis did kill their own when convenient, and Kammler had made enemies. His ruthlessness didn't stop at the camps. He treated subordinates like expendable tools. Rivals vanished. Inconvenient engineers died in accidents. If someone wanted him gone, they'd have had opportunity. But it doesn't explain why he'd allow himself to be vulnerable. Kammler was paranoid, intelligent. He'd survived years of Nazi internal politics, which was more dangerous than combat. Would he really let himself be cornered and killed without leverage? Which brings us to theory 2. He defected. Not publicly, not dramatically, but quietly, with a deal. American intelligence specifically. He offered them everything. The locations of secret facilities, the blueprints for advanced weapons, access to scientists who could rebuild it all under a new flag. In exchange, immunity, a new identity, a comfortable life somewhere the Soviets would never find him. This theory isn't speculation. It's documented that the Americans were actively hunting Nazi scientists in the final months of the war. Operation Paperclip. The goal was simple: grab as many German engineers as possible before the Soviets got them. Ethics were optional. If you could build rockets or jets or anything that gave the United States an edge in the coming Cold War, your past was forgiven. Werner von Braun, the father of the V-2 rocket, ended up running NASA's moon program. Hundreds of others were integrated into American military and scientific institutions. Their Nazi affiliations were scrubbed from records. They became assets. Kammler would have been the ultimate asset. He knew everything. Not fragments, not pieces. the whole picture. And if even 10% of the rumors about Glocke and the Haunebu program were true, he possessed knowledge decades ahead of conventional science. Would the Americans pass that up? Would they let him fall into Soviet hands? Or worse, let him die and take those secrets with him? Not a chance. So the theory goes like this. Kammler, realizing the war was lost, made contact with American intelligence through intermediaries. He offered a trade, his knowledge for his freedom. The Americans agreed. They extracted him under cover of chaos, gave him a new name, a new past, and put him to work in some underground facility where his expertise could be exploited without public scrutiny. Evidence? Circumstantial, but compelling. In the years after the war, American aerospace programs made leaps that defied logical progression. Jet propulsion, rocketry, materials science, all advancing faster than expected. Some of it came from captured documents, some from recruited scientists. But some of it had no clear origin. Projects that appeared fully formed, designs with no prototype history, as if someone handed them a completed blueprint and said, "Build this." And then there's the UFO connection. Starting in 1947, just 2 years after Kammler disappeared, UFO sightings in the United States exploded. Not overseas, not in Europe where the sightings had been during the war. In America, over military bases, near research facilities. Roswell, New Mexico. July 1947. Something crashed. The army said it was a weather balloon. Witnesses said it was a disc, smooth metal, no visible propulsion, crew inside that didn't look human. What if it wasn't alien? What if it was a recovered Haunebu prototype being tested by the Americans? What if Kammler had told them where the last functional discs were hidden? What if the crash wasn't a malfunction, but a test flight that went wrong? And if the crew didn't look human, maybe that's because they'd been exposed to something. Radiation, time dilation, the after effects of Glocke experiments that twisted biology in ways we still don't understand. Pure speculation? Maybe. But consider this. The Nazis had 20 years of secret research. The Vril Society started in the 20s. By 1945, they'd had 2 decades to refine, test, and perfect technologies that the rest of the world didn't even know were possible. That knowledge didn't evaporate when Berlin fell. It went somewhere. And Kammler was the man who could tell you where. If he's alive, he'd be over 100 years old now, long dead by natural causes. But in the 50s, 60s, 70s, he could have been sitting in a Nevada hangar or a New Mexico lab, watching American engineers try to reverse engineer the devices he'd already perfected. Or maybe he's dead, shot in a Prague alley, buried in an unmarked grave, his secrets lost forever. But here's the problem with that version. If his secrets were lost, why did the Americans keep looking? For decades after the war, intelligence agencies scoured South America for Nazi fugitives. Mengele, Eichmann, Barbie. They found them, arrested some, killed others. But Kammler, never found, never confirmed. Either they stopped looking because they knew he was dead, or they stopped looking because they already had him. The truth, as always, is buried under layers of classification and denial. But the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, especially when the people who would have that evidence are the ones who benefit most from keeping it hidden. Hans Kammler was the key master, the man who could have unlocked the darkest corners of Nazi science and handed them to the highest bidder. And someone, somewhere, paid his price. The question is what they bought, and whether they ever figured out how to use it. Because if they did, the war didn't end in 1945. It just changed theaters. Antarctica, December 1946. The war had been over for a year. Europe was rebuilding. Nuremberg trials were convicting Nazi leaders. The world was supposed to be moving toward peace. So why did the United States Navy send 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft to the bottom of the world? Officially, scientific research, mapping the coast, testing equipment in extreme cold, training exercises for potential Arctic operations. The stated goal was to establish an American presence in Antarctica before anyone else claimed territory. Officially. But you don't send that much firepower for cartography. The operation was called High Jump, led by Rear Admiral Richard Byrd, a decorated explorer who'd flown over both poles, experienced, respected, not the kind of man you send on a routine mission. This was the largest Antarctic expedition in history, more personnel than most combat operations, more ships than some invasions, and it was launched less than 18 months after Germany surrendered. Coincidence? The Nazi connection to Antarctica isn't a secret, it's documented. In 1938, Germany sent an expedition to the region they called Neuschwabenland, New Swabia. They flew over 150,000 square miles, dropped thousands of metal darts with swastikas, claiming the territory for the Reich. They took photographs, mapped coastlines, and according to some accounts,
They discovered something. Warm water lakes, geothermal vents, ice-free caverns heated by volcanic activity deep beneath the surface, caves large enough to hide entire facilities, natural harbors protected by ice walls, a perfect refuge. For what? In the final months of the war, as Allied forces closed in, convoys of U-boats left German ports. Not all of them surrendered. Not all of them were accounted for. Some headed south, far south, into waters where pursuit was difficult and detection nearly impossible. What were they carrying? Personnel, scientists, engineers, the kind of people who couldn't afford to be captured, the kind of knowledge that couldn't fall into enemy hands, and equipment, prototypes, devices that the Reich had spent years developing and couldn't bear to destroy. The theory, dismissed as fringe conspiracy, is that the Nazis established a base in Neuschwabenland, an underground fortress where the remnants of the SS could regroup, where research could continue, where, if given enough time, the Reich could rebuild. Insane? Maybe, but not unprecedented. The Germans had built massive underground complexes in Europe, entire factories carved into mountains, submarine pens with reinforced concrete ceilings 5 meters thick. They had the expertise, they had the desperation, and they had a year and a half between the expedition and the end of the war to prepare. If such a base existed, the Americans needed to find it, hence High Jump. The fleet departed Norfolk, Virginia in December 1946, arrived in Antarctica in January 1947. The plan was to stay for 8 months, map the interior, establish research stations, claim territory. They stayed 6 weeks. Then they left. Abruptly, ahead of schedule, ships damaged, aircraft lost, personnel casualties reported but not detailed. And when Admiral Byrd returned, he gave an interview that sparked decades of speculation. He said, "The expedition discovered that the United States had to be prepared to defend itself against an enemy that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds." An enemy. Not weather, not ice, an enemy. What did he see? Reports, unverified but persistent, describe encounters, not with Nazis, with craft, discs that rose from the water, vehicles that moved through ice like it wasn't there, objects that pursued American aircraft and forced them down, not with weapons, with speed, with maneuverability that made evasion impossible. One account claims a PBM Mariner flying boat was lost not to mechanical failure, but to an attack. The crew radioed they were being followed. Then contact ceased. The wreckage was never found. Officially, it crashed, cause unknown. Another report describes a disc emerging from the ocean near one of the ships, hovering, observing. When the ship's guns trained on it, the disc shot away faster than anything the crew had seen, faster than jets, faster than rockets. Were these Nazi Haunebu discs? Prototypes that had been relocated to Antarctica? Were the Germans using their refuge not as a hiding place, but as a staging ground for a new kind of warfare? Or was it something else entirely? Because here's where it gets strange. The descriptions of the craft encountered during High Jump don't match German engineering aesthetics. The Haunebu designs were brutal, industrial. These were described as smooth, seamless, elegant in a way the Nazis never were, which raises the possibility that Neuschwabenland wasn't a Nazi base,
it was already occupied. The theory, wild but internally consistent, suggests that when the Germans explored Antarctica in 1938, they found something, not land, not ice, evidence of a prior civilization, ruins, technology, entrances to subterranean structures built by someone long before humanity developed written language. And maybe, just maybe, that someone was still there.
The Nazi obsession with ancient civilizations is documented. They searched for Atlantis, sent expeditions to Tibet, looted artifacts from every occupied territory. They believed, genuinely, that Aryan ancestors had possessed advanced knowledge, that lost cities held secrets worth more than armies. What if they were right? What if Antarctica, beneath miles of ice, contained the remnants of a civilization that preceded recorded history? A people who built when the continent was still habitable, who left behind technology buried under glaciers for millennia. And what if the Nazis found it? That would explain why they claimed the territory, why they sent U-boats there during the war, why, in the chaos of defeat, they prioritized relocating people and equipment to a frozen wasteland. Because it wasn't a wasteland, it was a treasure vault. And Operation High Jump was the United States attempting to break in. But they failed. Or they were warned off. Because 6 weeks into an 8-month mission, they retreated. And in the decades that followed, Antarctica became increasingly off-limits. Treaties were signed, military operations restricted. The continent was declared a scientific preserve, where armed conflict was prohibited. Why? To protect penguins? Or to prevent anyone from digging too deep? Admiral Byrd's career continued, but he never returned to Antarctica. He never fully explained his comments about enemies flying pole to pole. And when he died in 1957, any first-hand knowledge he possessed died with him. But the rumors didn't. They grew, mutated, spread into every corner of UFO lore and conspiracy theory. Some claim the Nazis are still there, a breakaway civilization living beneath the ice, perfecting the technologies they started during the war. Others say it's extraterrestrial, that Antarctica is a monitoring station where non-human intelligence observes humanity from a safe distance. The truth? Likely far more mundane. Operation High Jump was a military exercise that encountered harsh conditions and was cut short due to logistics. Byrd's comments were misinterpreted. The lost aircraft was an accident. But then, why the secrecy? Why classify so much of the operation's records? Why, 75 years later, are details still redacted? If there's nothing to hide, why keep hiding it? Antarctica remains the most mysterious continent. 98% covered in ice, temperatures that kill in minutes, storms that ground aircraft and sink ships, a place where human presence is tolerated, not welcomed. And beneath that ice, kilometers deep, untouched, unseen. Maybe there's nothing there, just ancient rock and frozen water. Or maybe the Nazis found something the world wasn't ready to know existed. And maybe, when Operation High Jump sailed south, they found it too, but couldn't bring themselves to admit what it was. July 8, 1947, Roswell, New Mexico. The headline in the local paper reads, "RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region." The Roswell Army Airfield had issued a press release. They'd recovered a crashed disc. Not speculation, not rumor. Official military statement. A flying saucer. The phrase wasn't a joke yet. It was descriptive. 24 hours later, the story changed. New press release, new narrative. It wasn't a saucer. It was a weather balloon. High-altitude surveillance equipment. Nothing extraordinary. The initial report was a mistake. Over-enthusiastic officers who misidentified debris. And for 30 years, that was the end of it. Weather balloon. Case closed. Except it wasn't debris from a balloon, and the officers involved knew the difference. Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer who inspected the crash site, spent decades insisting what he saw wasn't terrestrial. Metal that wouldn't burn, wouldn't bend. Lightweight, but impossibly strong. Beams with symbols that weren't English, weren't Russian, weren't anything he recognized. The ranch owner, Mac Brazel, described debris scattered over an area the size of a football field. Too much for a balloon, too strange for conventional aircraft. He collected samples, brought them to town, and within hours the military sealed the site. Witnesses were told to keep quiet, some directly, others through implication. The kind of silence that comes when men in uniform make it clear that speaking is dangerous. So what crashed in Roswell? The official story evolved over the decades. First, weather balloon, then Project Mogul, a classified program using high-altitude balloons to detect Soviet nuclear tests. The debris was sensitive equipment that had to be covered up for national security reasons. Plausible. Except Project Mogul used conventional materials, rubber, aluminum foil, wood, the kind of stuff you'd find in any aircraft wreckage, not metal that couldn't be cut, not materials that reassembled themselves when crumpled. So, if it wasn't American and it wasn't Soviet, what's left? The popular answer: extraterrestrial, beings from another world, advanced civilization observing Earth. The crash was an accident. The cover-up was to prevent panic. But there's another possibility, one that connects directly to everything we've discussed. What if Roswell wasn't aliens? What if it was Nazi? Think about the timeline. The war ended in May 1945. Operation Paperclip brought hundreds of German scientists to the United States. Werner von Braun arrived in 1945. By 1946, he was already working on American rocket programs in New Mexico. New Mexico, White Sands Proving Ground, the location where captured V-2 rockets were tested, where German engineers were rebuilding their weapons under American flags. And just 200 kilometers away? Roswell. What if the Americans, using knowledge acquired from Hans Kammler or other SS scientists, were attempting to build their own Haunebu disk? What if the technology was real but unstable? What if a test flight went wrong? That would explain the military response: immediate lockdown, press release retraction, witness intimidation. Not because it was alien, but because it was ours. Because revealing we were flying experimental aircraft based on Nazi designs would raise questions nobody wanted to answer. Questions like, how long have you had this technology? Where did it come from? What else are you hiding? The debris descriptions match Haunebu construction reports. Lightweight metallic alloys, strange symbols that could be German technical notation, misidentified by witnesses unfamiliar with engineering diagrams. A disc-shaped craft, approximately 9 meters across, comparable to Haunebu 2 dimensions. And the bodies? Multiple witnesses claimed small humanoid figures were recovered. Not human, grey skin, large heads. The archetypal alien description that became cultural shorthand for extraterrestrial life. But what if those bodies weren't alien? What if they were human? Victims of Glocke exposure, pilots subjected to time dilation experiments that warped their biology, radiation unlike anything nuclear, effects that crystallized tissue and malformed bone structure. The Nazis documented these effects in their own experiments, bodies that no longer looked fully human, test subjects transformed into something between life and death. If American scientists were continuing that research, using German equipment and methods, the results would be the same. Pilots who looked wrong, who died in ways that defied medical explanation, who had to be hidden because acknowledging their existence meant acknowledging the experiments that created them. The cover-up wasn't about protecting the public from alien knowledge, it was about protecting the government from questions about what they were doing with Nazi science. This theory fits the evidence without requiring extraterrestrial intervention. It explains why the military responded so aggressively, why the story changed so quickly, why witnesses were silenced with threats rather than reassurances. Because we captured alien technology is a manageable narrative. Strange but ultimately explainable as beyond our control. But we're flying Nazi-designed aircraft powered by technology that kills our own pilots. That's a scandal. That's Congress. That's public outrage and international condemnation. So they buried it, called it a balloon, later a spy device. Anything but what it actually was. And here's the uncomfortable part. If this happened in 1947,
2 years after the war. How long did the testing continue? How many other crashes were there? How many failures were hidden under layers of classification? The technology didn't disappear, we know that. The B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, unveiled in 1989, has a design eerily similar to the Horten flying wing the Germans developed in the 40s. Smooth, disc-like from certain angles, radar-absorbent materials, propulsion that's whisper-quiet compared to conventional jets. Coincidence? Or continuation? The Nazis lost the war, but their technology survived. Not in museums, in labs, in black project facilities scattered across deserts where prying eyes can't reach. The scientists were recruited, the blueprints were captured. The devices, if they existed, were dismantled and studied. And bit by bit, year by year, that research was integrated into American aerospace programs. Not openly, not with credit, but the influence is there, in the shapes, in the capabilities, in the advancements that appeared without clear developmental history. Roswell was the moment the secret nearly broke. The moment the public almost learned that the skies above them weren't empty. That the objects people had been seeing since 1944 weren't misidentifications or hoaxes. They were real, and they were ours, built by us, using knowledge stolen from the worst regime in human history. Technology born in concentration camps and perfected in underground labs by men we chose to forgive because they could make us powerful. That's the legacy. Not aliens, not mysteries, just choices. Choices made in secrecy. Choices that prioritized advancement over ethics. Choices that continue to shape what flies above us, unseen and unacknowledged. The Nazis wanted to build aircraft that defied physics. They pursued it with fanaticism, with cruelty, with a willingness to sacrifice anyone in the name of innovation. And when they lost, we picked up where they left off. Die Glocke, Haunebu, the Vril Society's dreams of transcendent flight. Maybe it was all fantasy. Maybe the discs never flew. Maybe the technology was theoretical and nothing more. But then, why the secrecy? Why the decades of denial? Why classified documents from a war that ended 80 years ago? The smoke may clear, but the scars remain. The Black Forest crash, the Foo Fighters, the Bell, Kamler's disappearance, Operation High Jump, Roswell. Each one a thread in a tapestry we're not allowed to see completed. Maybe it's for the best. Maybe some knowledge is too dangerous to share. Maybe the world isn't ready to know that the monsters who built Auschwitz also built doorways to places we shouldn't go. Or maybe it's simpler. Maybe the secret isn't technology. Maybe it's shame. Shame that we needed them. Shame that we used them. Shame that the rockets we rode to the moon were designed by men with blood on their hands and swastikas in their pasts. History is written by the victors. But technology? Technology doesn't care who wins. It just cares about being built. And once it's built, it never really goes away. The skies are still watching. The questions remain unanswered. And somewhere, in classified hangars and redacted files, the legacy of the Nazi UFO program endures. Not as myth, not as conspiracy, but as the uncomfortable truth that the future was built, in part, by the darkest minds of the past. Thank you for joining us on the front lines. Subscribe to keep the investigation alive. This is the History Frontline. Dismissed.